On the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Now, Cana was about 10 miles or so north of Nazareth, which was where Jesus lived. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. Now, just not super important, but it says that Jesus' mother was there, and then also that Jesus was invited. So my assumption here is that Jesus' mother was already there in Cana, and my thought on that is that maybe she was helping prepare and helping plan the wedding. So it says that Jesus' mother was there, and that Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." Now you might think, well, what's the big deal with that? I mean, the party will be done in a little while anyways, right? Well, actually, in the first century, weddings worked a bit different. Sometimes a wedding feast could last like an entire week, and so if you ran out of food or ran out of wine, it was actually a pretty big deal. It was sort of like there was this written code in their social system that of hospitality, and if you run out of food or wine, it's like you're breaking this this covenant with other people, that your hospitality will mean that you have wine and food for them. And so, oddly, if you were the couple, the bride or groom who ran out of food or wine at your ceremony, that kind of embarrassment could follow you for years. I mean, it seems strange to us, but that's kind of how their, it's just how their system worked. And so to run out of wine at a wedding feast, big deal, very big deal. And so they understood wine to be sort of a representation of a full life. In Psalms 4, it talks about how wine, and also in Psalms 104, I think, it talks about how wine makes men's hearts merry. And we're, many people are aware of the toast that the Jewish people would say, or that, still say when they toast, is l'chaim, it's to life. And so wine was sort of this representation of, having a full life. And so, couple that with the fact that it's embarrassing to run out of supplies at a party, So Jesus' mother, who I'm assuming was helping plan the party, came to Jesus. She knew Jesus was, I think, a get it done kind of guy. He was a carpenter, obviously, and so he was used to figuring out complex problems, I guess. And I'm making some assumptions here, but and I think she also recognized in Jesus probably some very his value of character and things like that. And so she came to Jesus, and a lot of assumptions there, but that's sort of my thought on it. So she came to Jesus and said, they have no more wine. "Dear woman, why do you involve me?" Jesus replied, "My time has not yet come." Interesting statement. I mean, he's looking forward to a time when his ministry would be active. And he's saying, my time hasn't come. It's not time for me to do these things yet. His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." This comes across as pushy, but I think what she picked up from his statement is that Jesus, by saying that, is saying, okay, I'll do something, but, just want you to know that it's not my time yet. His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Okay, so what you need to understand about these 6 water jars is that, first of all, they're pretty big. They're, it'd be like it'd probably be a pretty big, ceramic pot of some kind, 20 to 30 gallons. But it's not for drinking water. These were for ritual cleansing. And so the Jewish faith at this time had sort of this perception of religion that Jesus would later come in stark conflict with. And the idea is that you are rendered ceremonially unclean by what you come in contact with. It's the idea that your closeness to God has everything to do with your cleanliness. And so their idea is that sinful people have sort of what you might call, I saw on one website, sin cooties. And you could sort of translate the uncleanliness from coming in contact or even breathing the same air. And so during the course of a meal, there were a number of different rituals that you would do to cleanse yourself, to clean yourself from coming in contact with sinful things and sinful people and sinful air and all this stuff. And the thing about this was that ritual was not something that the Old Testament taught. It's something that the religious system over a number of hundreds of years had basically created. And so that's what these washing basins, these big washing pots were for. It was so that the people could remain ceremonially clean and not become defiled by this sort of sin cootie idea. And so nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water." So they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, "Now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet." Master of the banquet would be the person that is planning and organizing the banquet. And so, obviously it would fall on him if they ran out of wine. I mean, it would be his fault or her fault. They did so. And the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. Now this is interesting. Jesus didn't stand up and do this miracle so that everybody could see. He did it sort of behind the scenes, which through the rest of Scripture what we notice is that miracles are done for a specific purpose. There's sort of this formula. There's a miracle and then a message, and so the miracle is usually done so that the message has validity. We see that through all the Gospels. We see it through Acts, the book of Acts, and so this one is interesting because he doesn't give a direct message verbally. But I think what we find is that he gives a message that is, for the people who knew, is very important. And so it says the servants knew where the wine came from. Well, here's the interesting thing about this. He just made it impossible for these people to do their ritual washing. I mean, he filled up the washing basins with wine. And so he makes it here impossible for them to do their ritual, to do their acts of ceremony. And so here's the message I think that he's portraying very clearly here, but sort of in a behind-the-scenes way. I think he's basically saying, that's stupid. You don't get close to God by cleaning your skin. You don't get close to God by these silly rituals. And I think, he will develop that in the rest of the book. But here there seems to be this sort of behind-the-scenes message for the very few that knew, that would be his disciples and the servants. They see that this is a message, and they see from this miracle that that he has very little regard for the rituals of man. These man-made rituals, he basically throws them out, and not only throws them out, but makes it impossible for these people to do it. For them to clean themselves during the meal. And so, verse 10. Let's start back in verse 9. They did so, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and said, "Everyone brings out their choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had a little too much to drink. But you have saved the best till now." This, the first of his miraculous signs, Jesus performed at Cana in Galilee. He thus revealed his glory, and his disciples put their faith in him.